I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank the Director of Coordination and Response of OCHA, Mr. Ginch, for the briefing on the situation in eastern Ukraine. We think that OCHA and other humanitarian agencies should regularly inform the Council of the humanitarian situation in the region, provide objective statistics of the situation of civilians, including data on those wounded, killed, as well as the destruction of civilian entities. On a human scale, the situation in the east, in particular in Donetsk and Lugansk, is disastrous. Today, with all certainty, there's a need to speak about a true war. The ICRC has officially recognized that there is an internal armed conflict in the east of Ukraine. In spite of international agreements, including the 17 April Geneva Agreement and that from Berlin on 2 July, which were signed onto by the Ukrainian government, Kiev continues to step up its military operations, taking hundreds and thousands of lives with it. According to information, the punitive militia are playing a leading role. They're subordinate to no armed forces in Ukraine. They are carrying out the orders of certain leaders of the Security Council of the country and are financed by local oligarchs. The overflights on cities have become a daily reality. Artillery, tanks, as well as Grad rockets are used. There's continuing information from locals about the use of phosphorus bombs and cluster bombs. There's indiscriminate shelling of housing blocks and critical civilian infrastructure. In many small towns, about 80% of houses have been destroyed. According to most conservative estimates, more than 600 buildings have fallen. Today, a rocket attack was conducted in Shachorsk. On 2 August, there was a shelling by the Ukrainian artillery of the city of Pervomaisk, where homes were destroyed, as well as 2 electrical power plants, hospitals, and others. Because of the shelling of the Ukrainian armed forces, shells continue to fall into Russia. There are about 20 of such cases. On 3rd of August, a Ukrainian army mine erupted on the crossing point of Gukova in the Rostov Oblast, where OSCE monitors were working. According to the most conservative estimates of international humanitarian agencies, there are more than 1,367 killed and thousands of wounded, including children. These are worrisome numbers. And just in one day in the city of Gorlov, 40 people were killed. In the area of military operations, there are more than 4 million people. Of them, more than 200,000 have been left without drinking water. There's a critical health and epidemiological situation in Lugansk. There's no electricity going to houses. There's no water either. Because of shelling, there's no clean water. There's a lack of telephone communications, and even waste is not being cleaned up. Ukrainians have begun to leave the country en masse. Almost 800,000 Ukrainians have come to Russia since the beginning of the crisis. They have come to the migration services to legalize their situation. About 170,000 of them have done so. And there have been centers opened for the refugees. Our country stands ready to undertake this great burden and do not need material assistance from outside. We stand ready to provide humanitarian assistance to Ukrainians on our own. The most dramatic situation is in the east of the Ukraine on the health front. The majority of doctors have been evacuated. There's a need to understand that in the areas of military clashes, the most vulnerable have been left, who have no way of leaving. The Kiev authorities, it seems, are not interested at all. We've made multiple appeals to them regarding the creation of humanitarian corridors to evacuate children and the vulnerable, including child orphans, and also regarding sending humanitarian assistance from Russia. But Kiev has refused all of these proposals scornfully. Russia calls upon the international community to take emergency measures to improve the humanitarian situation in the east of Ukraine. Because of this, on 4th of August, the Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, once again sent an official appeal to UN humanitarian agencies as well as those from the OSCE, the Council of Europe, and the ICRC to convene a humanitarian mission. We'd like to send a convoy with Russian humanitarian assistance under the aegis and with the accompaniment of the ICRC to Donetsk and Lugansk, as well as to other inhabited areas of Ukraine, where IDPs are concentrated from the east. We stand ready to act with optimal transparency. Let the International Committee to monitor the convoys, their transport routes, and the distribution of aid. We think first and foremost there's a need to provide food, medicine, and medical equipment, as well as water purification systems and generators. Sir, there are many cases when the provision of assistance to civilians suffering from an armed conflict is very difficult. This applies to the situation, for example, in South Sudan or in Iraq and Syria, in those areas controlled by terrorist organizations. The situation in the east of Ukraine means that there needs to be a halt to the politicking, and there needs to be a true following of international humanitarian principles. And finally, Kiev's approach to violently repress the eastern regions will have most difficult consequences for the whole Ukrainian people, and this is simply regrettable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Well, unfortunately, a number of members of the Security Council haven't heard our call to reject politicizing this discussion of the humanitarian situation in eastern Ukraine through providing humanitarian assistance to the population in need. Someone, as always, has protected the Kievan authorities by distorting the role of the Russian Federation. Others repeated speeches that they have said previously, given previously at Security Council meetings, and some have said that the killing and wounding of individuals as a result of the armed conflict in Ukraine is not worthy of separate discussion. Such propaganda was repeated by the representative of Ukraine as well. We're grateful to those members of the Council who shared our concern, our alarm. We'd like to again reaffirm our readiness to closely cooperate with the humanitarian agencies, with all relevant organizations, all relevant institutions who not only can, but who must play their role in providing assistance and help to the population in eastern Ukraine. We cherish a hope that today's Security Council meeting will serve to promote coordination of our common efforts with them. Mr. President, I thank you.
I thank